Welcome friends to another r/malicious compliance video. If you want to help make my day, all you gotta do is hit the like and subscribe buttons down below. That said, our first story of the day is by that EXO guy. Respect the schedule, kiddo. This story took place about 2 years ago, over the span of about 2 weeks. I work in a factory on an assembly line that makes car parts, and my boss at the time was stingy about meeting quotas and people respecting the schedule down to the minute. Let's call him Mike. Now for some setup, we'd clock in at 7 a.m., work 8 hours, and clock out at 3 p.m., breaks included. We had to do some paperwork both before we started production and after we ended it. Mike was up on our faces from day one about needing to be in at least 15 minutes before our shift started so we could clear the paperwork. The bus dropped us off at 6:45 a.m. and we needed to go to the lockers to change, so that was impossible. Begin production at exactly 7 a.m. and stop 5 minutes before 3 p.m. so we'd have just enough time to finish the ending paperwork. But he of course had never done that paperwork himself and either didn't know or didn't care that it actually took closer to 20 minutes. Now, that paperwork was essential. If a shift didn't do it, they'd get chewed out hard by quality control. And combined with the fact that Mike was strict about the quota, 8 hours just wasn't enough to do everything they wanted. It was closer to 9 hours, but I said, fine, I'll let it slide, and started coming to work with my own car so I could be early and also stay 15 to 20 minutes over to finish up. I wasn't reimbursed for gas, I wasn't paid overtime for coming early and leaving late, but it stopped the near daily arguments with Mike, so I relented. Fast forward about 6 months, and me and my team had a solid routine in place. Everything went smoothly, we mostly met the quota, the paperwork was always done, until one day it wasn't. One Monday morning, my car had trouble starting up, and I'd already missed the bus, so I called Mike to let him know I'd be running a bit late. I figured, hey, he noticed I try my best every day, he'd let it slide this one time. How wrong I was. Mike was polite over the phone, but he chewed me out the moment I got in. I was 2 minutes late. I made it 7:02. Next time you're late, don't bother coming in. I don't need lazy people working here. That was just one of the nasty things he said, but it's the one I remember most clearly because it blew me away. He used me being late to guilt trip me into working copious amounts of overtime that week, and I accepted just to appease him. I wasn't a very confrontational person, so I always took the path of least resistance in an argument. And long story short, the overtime left me so drained that I overslept Friday and was late again. This time I made it in at 7:03. I should fire you right now for this. I already gave you a warning Monday, was the first thing he said to me when I came in. Sorry, I was just too tired. I foolishly tried to defend myself. It won't happen again, plus I've been coming in early and leaving late for months. Can you cut me some slack for 3 minutes? I didn't ask you to do that, he answered, which was a lie since he expressly asked for us to come in 15 minutes early every day. Your shift starts exactly at 7 a.m. and ends exactly at 3 p.m., not a minute earlier or later. Got it, boss, I said, all giddy inside. The next week, I came in exactly at 7 a.m. and left exactly at 3 p.m. Production started at 7:20 and ended at 2:40 so I could do the paperwork. That of course affected our quota, and it didn't take Mike long to notice. We argued over that as well, obviously, but I reminded him of what he said earlier and it actually shut him up. He tried to get me to relent and start coming in 15 minutes early and leaving 20 minutes late again. But I just laughed and said, nope, not my problem. But the story doesn't end here, because of course Mike tried to pull more crap with me. He tried to get me fired for this, but it didn't fly with HR. His write-ups just bounced when he sent them further up the command chain. But he noticed something that I didn't. I clocked in a few seconds after 7. We used an electronic log with individual access cards, so we passed a new rule that he planned to enforce retroactively. Only full hours are paid. If you clock in or out too late or early, the hour gets cut. He came to confront me about that the following Monday a few minutes after I got in. Hey OP, I noticed that you clocked in too late every day last week, so we'll have to cut 5 hours from your payroll, he said with a smug grin. This took me aback a bit because I'd never heard of that rule before, and I saw others clocking in at the same time as me, so I just stared at him in shock. He clearly derived pleasure from this, thinking he finally bested me. I'd have my pay cut for my insolence. I also checked and found out that you clocked in 5 seconds too late right now, he continued. So this hour will also go unpaid, I asked. Yep, he said, nearly ecstatic by that point. Awesome, I answered with a poop-eating grin. See you at 8. I turned and left, grabbed a coffee and a sandwich, and I waited in the break room. Mike came after me 10 minutes later and finally apologized, asking me to return to work. So you'll pay me this hour, I asked. No, you clocked in too late. Then I'm not obligated to work it, I said. Fine, it'll be paid, now get back to work, he relented. And the 5 hours from last week, I demanded. 'Cause if not, I'll leave 5 hours early today to compensate. He looked like he was ready to strangle me with his bare hands, but he accepted. I got back to work, those hours were paid, and we returned to our normal routine of me coming in early and leaving a bit late. And Mike never bothered me for being late a few minutes ever again, though it was a rare occurrence. For the 2 years I worked under him, until he left, I still worked there. I was late maybe 3 more times, but he couldn't stand my guts and actively avoided me after that point. I know that this story isn't very impressive, but I'm still proud of it and still brag about it to this day whenever funny stories from work come up in conversations. Be honest, are you a little dissatisfied with the ending that OP had to keep coming in early and leaving late? Let me know in the comments down below. Our next story is by JoyReader0, page 34 in your own manual, sir. Here's something I hope others can turn to their own advantage. Small, but does the job. I took a few years off to have kids. Ladies, you know the drill. Then back to retail to gain a reference for a part-time office job in a company I shall call Da Biz. Once hired at Da Biz, I improved and expanded that second job by reading the manuals and taking on responsibilities for technical tasks that nobody else wanted to learn how to do. Spreadsheets, backups, documentation, inventory. All my life, I've avoided being manipulated by experts. My parents, my teachers, my church, my classmates. Nobody at Da Biz was a patch on the butt of my sweet, conniving little old grandma. So when the first thing HR said upon hiring me was, last hired, first fired, we can lay you off at any time without reason, I knew it was time to study the employee manual. Part-time work had definite advantages. For instance, when the kids did the chicken pox at the classic 2-week intervals, if I'd have been full-time, they would have fired me. Said so right there in that employee manual. Such sweethearts. I worked very hard and was amused at the contortions my employers went through to keep me legal. There's a limit to the number of hours one can work in a calendar year and still be considered part-time. I invariably ran out of hours in early October. Somehow they would contrive to keep me working without benefits for the rest of the year. Suddenly, at 4 years and 8 months, they offered to let me go full-time. This was entirely unexpected. The kids were old enough, I was already considering it, but for them to offer without being asked? No applications, interviews, or ceremonial groveling? Garbage alarm goes double whoopee ding ding. Back to the manual. Oh, well, that's entirely characteristic of Da Biz. That's very kind of you, sir. I shall be happy to go full-time in 4 months, as soon as I've celebrated my 5th anniversary with Da Biz. 4 months? We want you to start right away. But you see, sir, if I go full-time before working a full 5 years, I lose all seniority and the extra week of vacation I've worked so hard for. It's right here in your employee manual. If I wait 4 months, I keep my seniority and vacation. If I stay part-time forever, I still keep my seniority and vacation, and of course my flexibility if there's a family crisis. It makes no difference to my paycheck as you're not offering a raise. Indeed, without a raise to support the cost of your benefits, take-home pay will be less. He looked at me, I looked at him, and we understood each other perfectly. Nice try, go tell your boss it didn't work. You know, the jerk who made the secretaries type up his thesis and made me tweak all the graphs to make his data support his conclusions. I went full-time shortly after my 5th anniversary and worked there for another 15 years. And this, my friends, right here is why I read every single terms of service agreement. I would never just tap the accept box and move on. Well, maybe for a few of them. Okay, I do hit the accept box and move on every time. But maybe if I didn't, it would come in handy. Our next story is by DodoHead974. Want to prove PTO during the holidays? Good thing we have personal days. So the company I worked for previously used to give us a set number of vacation days, 12, and a set number of personal days, 10. Vacation days were obviously for vacations and planning, but it was made clear to us that personal days were essentially sick days. They weren't for planning, more like you wake up sick and you have to call out. Fine, whatever. The only problem with the personal days is, unlike vacation days, they would not roll over and you couldn't get paid for them. If you didn't use them, you lost them. Now here's an important piece of information. HR policy prohibited managers from requesting doctor's notes or even asking what you were taking a personal day for. The only time that changed is if you were requesting something like short-term disability or something. So I'm working, and like most people, don't make holiday plans too far out in advance. I saved up some PTO to use at the end of the year, but not enough to take both Thanksgiving and Christmas. Then the end of September comes around, and management publishes a bulletin to the effect of, "Too many people requesting off, no PTO will be approved for all of November or December." Now obviously this didn't go well with the department, 60 people on the team, many of us which saved days to take around the holiday, and now we would either have to use our days in October or roll them over a max of 3 days. Knowing the managers, I elected to use my days in October. No guarantee I would actually get them to roll over and use them, and you might be thinking, this is the malicious compliance. Everybody took off in October. Oh no, my friends, you've forgotten about the personal days, which yours truly as a healthy 25-year-old has in spades. 6 left to be exact. Now cue malicious compliance. Thanksgiving comes around and I'm enjoying the holiday, but I think I ate too much. Unfortunately, I'm gonna have to call out Black Friday, today. I'm definitely not going shopping. I call out the next Friday as well. And the Friday after that, and the next as well. At this point you can see a trend. My manager did too. Calls me into her office to ask what's up. Obviously I played dumb, and she finally comes out and says, "You're calling out every Friday. Why?" "Personal days," I tell her. "And this has nothing to do with your holiday PTO being rejected?" she asks. "Nope. I've accrued personal days, and as of late, there wasn't a darn thing she could do, and the beautiful part was I wasn't the only person doing it. The company changed the PTO policy not long after." I would definitely think in a case like this where a lot of people start taking those personal days off, that's the kind of luxury most companies would go, "Alright, you know what? We cut off PTO and everybody started abusing these things. We're doing away with those." It's the kind of thing that a company has when it starts out for a while and it's really, really nice, and then they get burned one time because of it and they just rip it away. "Doesn't help the company, it'll save costs." And our final story of the day is by Super Squirrel 13. Get pushy, get stuffed. So this happened recently. I got a new job in another country, resigned from my job with plenty of notice, but they forced me to work beyond the date I wanted to leave. Beyond this, I wouldn't have access to a computer whilst moving. Not a problem. I could do 80% of my job from my phone anyway for a week or so, and let's be honest, they're forcing me to work at this point, so I wasn't being very super productive anyway. But again, they tell me to take the computer and I make an arrangement to bring it back when I come back to the home country a month or so later. However, this date has been extended due to unforeseen circumstances, but they were made aware. Suddenly, I get told they need the computer urgently and that I need to ensure it gets to them as soon as possible. Now, I could courier it to them, but that would cost close to $800, which they aren't paying. And this is where the malicious bit comes in. I find a company that specializes in sea freight and ship the laptop using them, send them proof that it's been handed off and everything. ETA on sea freight, 4 months. I don't know what kind of company this is, but it sounds like some very small hacky type thing. If they're going to go, "You're moving out of the country, we need you to use a computer, take our computer with you." And then right away they go, "You know what? No, we actually need that computer we gave you back that you took to a different country. What kind of an operation is running here?" I would just love to see the face of the person who organized sending the computer with OP and then seeing the fallout that person got for having to wait for 4 months to get it back from them. There's some real 1000 IQ operations going on behind this company here. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. So of all these stories I've read today, which is your favorite and why? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you haven't yet, if you could like and subscribe, that would mean a lot to me. Whatever you do, whether it's liking, subscribing, turning notifications on, all of it helps grow this channel and I appreciate the heck out of it. So until next time, I'll see you all tomorrow with some more stories.